Good Monday morning of the second week of an Ordinary Times, January 16th. It's really not. This is, I don't know what day. Today's the 5th of January where I'm making this. This is early in the morning. This is only 4:30 in the morning. I've been up about an hour and a half. Today's a busy day for me. I have a funeral this morning, late this morning, and then I'm on a committee at SLU, the university, dealing with honesty issues, kids cheating and stuff like that. It's a full day today for me. But it's a Thursday that I'm doing this, and I have to say, I always get antsy because I'm afraid I won't get them done. You see? So that's why I'm doing it now. I'm wasting 40 seconds of this just explaining who and what I'm doing right now. But this is an interesting week, the second week in Ordinary Time. In this regard, the readings. The contrast is enormous. I'll show it to you. The letter to the Hebrews runs the whole way. I don't know if we know exactly who wrote it. It's in St. Paul's tradition, but whether it was St. Paul, I don't believe it was. I don't know. I could look it up, but I didn't. But I'm almost sure we don't know. And yet we have St. Mark, the Gospel. Now, the contrast is enormous. The letter to the Hebrews is sophisticated. Holy moly, Andy. It is an enormously sophisticated letter written to Hebrew Christians, distinguishing the old order from the new order from the old, that Christ is the new high priest. The new sanctuary is his body, you see, etc. This is crucial to the identification of who and what it is to be Christian, and especially if you were Jewish, okay? You see, it's a letter to the Hebrews, you see. This is a marvelous piece of writing. St. Mark is the simplest of the Gospels, the first and the simplest. It's direct. I love St. Mark in many ways because it's just bang, bang, bang. It's the story of who and what is Christ. I believe it was written for the Romans, okay? I believe that. Whatever the case, it ain't highly sophisticated the way the letter to the Hebrews is. It's more direct. In fact, when we formed St. Mark's Parish here in Afton, I was so pleased we chose the name St. Mark because the people of the parish are good, solid citizens, but we're not a highly sophisticated parish. We are the church. Not that St. Mark's, plain and simple. That's us, including me, plain and simple. So I'm glad we could have said St. John with all the sophistication that goes with it. It's not St. Mark's. It's us, Joe Average. And that's all I am, Joe Average, but called to do something special. And that's this reading today, actually, from Hebrews. And this is a great line. I'll read it to you. Okay, I hope I don't foul this thing up. He says, brothers and sisters, every high priest is taken from among men and made their representative before God to offer gifts and sacrifices for sins. This is interesting. Who is it? Every high priest is taken from among men. We are called. And I'm a high priest in that regard, okay? All right? We don't pick it. We are called to it. That's really true. We're just like in St. Mark. We're like the gospel, the guys and the apostles. They're called. There's nothing special about them. There's nothing special about me. For sure, and nothing. But this is a great line, okay? He says, he's able to deal patiently with the ignorant and erring, for he himself is beset by weakness. And so for this reason must make a sin offering for himself as well as for the people. No one takes this honor upon himself, but only when called by God, just as Aaron was. Okay? That's a great line. That's so true. He's able to deal patiently with the ignorant and the erring, for he himself is beset by weakness. I think that is true. I think what makes the priesthood so special is that it is so fleshy. The men that are called to the priesthood are called to it. They're not worthy of it in the sense of innocent or special. We're called to it. In many ways, I think God calls us, Christ calls us to himself. Pick some of the most average of average. Look at the apostles, for Pete's sake. In the age of heroically large and big people, shapers of a culture, he picks these 12 guys, okay? And they do build a culture because they believed in Christ, not because they were special. Nothing special about them. There's nothing special about the priests, me, you, whoever is watching this thing. It's not. We're called, and in the calling, we're called to serve. And we serve in our weakness for the weak. That's so crucially important. I think one of the mistakes made in the piety of the church, not her theology, but her pieties, they presented images of the saintly in a distorted fashion. These men and women, nuns, whatever they may be, and priests and religious, they seem to be so far above what is human. They seem to be the epitome of the innocent, okay? What a betrayal, in my view. What a betrayal. The flesh of the church is what's holy. The apostles were stumble bums and they saved the world. You get it? They weren't innocent. St. Peter had his sandal in his mouth half the time. The other half, he had the strap in his mouth. Come on. But they saved the world because they believed in Christ and believed in redemption. And that's the truth. I was thinking of the guys in the outfit and the order. God, I think the men that were the best confessors, the ones that, to me, embodied the passionate vocation, weren't those that seemed the holiest, but those who seemed the weakest, the ones who struggled to believe and to remain faithful. They were the ones I identified with. Those were the ones I went to confession to. Or the great mystics. I think of two men in the outfit. I don't want to give their names or anything. One was a true mystic, a brilliant, brilliant man, powerfully influencing me. One of the most influential men in my life. The other, his closest friend, was a man who struggled with alcohol, really struggled. But I have to say, you couldn't distinguish the two of them in terms of their raw holiness, their fundamental holiness. The struggler and the mystic, because they were the same. They were the same, and that's why they were the best of friends. You had to know them. They were marvelous witnesses of fraternal love. Yeah, you had to know them. And they were both geniuses in their own right. I wish I could tell the whole story. Maybe I will someday. But you had to know them. They were great friends. And yet, what a difference externally. But internally, they were both men who struggled with life. And in their struggle, one became a mystic, the other an alcoholic. In the end, it was indistinguishable. Because even the alcoholic knew he was a creature before the Father. See? And the same with the mystic. They knew who they were. They were beautiful. I think of the monks in the outfit. Some of the men in the outfit that had the greatest influence on me were the ones who struggled with their humanity, who struggled within it, not against it, within it. They were marvelous men. I remember them with such affection. I remember one time when my Sarah, she was living in New York at the time, and I was at the monastery in Jamaica for a meeting, and Sarah came for dinner. She came over with the monks. We were all going to have dinner together. I have a beautiful picture of Sarah sitting with me at dinner with the monks. It's interesting because I took her to what I show her in the yard. I took her to the backyard and I showed her the cemetery where our men are buried. And I pointed them out. I pointed them out. The men that made a difference in my life. That's the truth. And they weren't innocent, but they were holy. They were holy often in their struggles. That's the truth. I wanted Sarah to see what real holiness looked like. I wanted her to see the real thing. I said, it's right here, right in front of you. And that was the truth. There's no way I can ever visit a Passionist monastery and not go to the cemetery. That's the truth. Because I want to visit the men who made a difference in my life by the holiness of their flesh. That's the truth. They were holy in the flesh. They didn't transcend their flesh. They transformed it by the struggle for goodness. Fidelity, that's the real word. They were faithful. In the end, they were faithful to their calling as high priests. And they offered sacrifice, not only for the weak and the sinful, but for themselves, because they were weak and sinful. I joined them every morning. I'm no better than anybody. We walk this life together in the weakness of the flesh, but under the guidance of the Spirit. In the end, that's what holiness is the constant pursuit through the guidance of the Spirit of what Christ calls us to. We try to remain faithful in the flesh.